Wing, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So I love your story. Tell us how you got started and how Wahoo's Fish Tacos got started.
Well, back in the mid 80s, you had this whole surf culture taking place in Orange County. And a lot of the kids that I grew up with were all working for these great companies like Quicksilver, Billabong, O'Neill. And everybody talked about having a place to go hang out. And I had the restaurant experience behind me. My dad has had restaurants all over the world. And, it's one of those things everybody talks and nobody ever does because nobody actually has the know-how to do it. Well, I was the only guy in the whole group that actually knew how to cook a little bit. So I got together with my two little brothers and say, hey, we can open a restaurant right here in Costa Mesa. It's literally within blocks of each of the major surf companies in the world at the time. But then again, this was a very small community back then in the 80s. And we opened the first store in 88. And it's one of those things, if you build it, they'll come kind of a joke. But it has to be like in their path. Like surfers don't go very far from the water and to work kind of thing. So we literally have to make it really, really easy. So people always thought, man, it's in the worst part of town. It's an industrial area. But if you knew the surf community, you knew that that's where everybody hung out. And so we built it. And a couple of months into it, people started coming and they're like, this is a really cool place. Now we can surf literally about a mile from the ocean. And on our way back, we can, grab lunch and go back to work. And it worked. And then from there, it just kind of, starting, getting the surf community behind us.
So when you guys were first getting started, I know I read or heard you talk about how Fish Tacos kind of became part of it, but was it literally just like, hey, this guy can cook, like go cook us something? Like, how was it that you came and landed on kind of what is now considered a unique genre of food, kind of the surf food or fish tacos?
Well, if you talk about Southern California, especially you remember from your days down in San Diego, is kids go to two places. When you don't have any money, Mexico is kind of like your first surf adventure.
I don't know what you're talking about. I never went to Mexico at all. Yeah.
And the next part is when you get a little more money, you actually go to Hawaii as your next surf adventure. So the cornerstone of our menu is a little bit of south of the border and a little bit of Asian. And obviously looking at me, I'm actually from Brazil. And my parents opened one of the first Chinese restaurants in Brazil way back in the 50s. So I have, half of me is, South American, the other half is the Asian. So it's kind of like we brought in what surfers wanted to eat when they really have a small budget. Because when you're in Hawaii, you're eating plate lunches off a truck. And when you're in Mexico, you're eating tacos off the stand. So we just literally took two street food and brought it inside a restaurant and still served it at a very affordable price and quick and easy, nothing fancy. And people just loved it because it was something literally you can eat right after you surf.
So you started this shack that's just a couple of blocks off the beach. Now you're in 4 states, 60 restaurants, right? Is that right?
5 or 6. I don't know. We're in Texas, Colorado, Hawaii, New York, Vegas. And soon we're going to Lincoln, Nebraska.
That's awesome. The surf culture that is Lincoln, Nebraska. So tell us about your growth. I mean, tell us about how you went from a cool little local restaurant where all the local surfers hang out to now what is, by all accounts, a really rapidly growing business.
We followed our customers. It wasn't like we had this idea, goes, hey, we're going to open a store in Laguna. Well, people from Laguna kept getting tired of driving to Costa Mesa. And that's like a literally 25-minute drive. And that's how we kept growing. And then people moved out of state. Literally, back in the mid-90s, snowboarding was taking off. And I had a buddy of mine that had gone to see Colorado in Boulder University. And he said, hey, I'm moving back to Colorado. I'm going to miss you. And I thought, hey, if I open a store in Colorado, give me a great reason to go snowboarding. And that's
awesome.
how the first Colorado store, like in the mid-90s, was open. And if you think
I love
about
that
like
your strategic plan was, well, how can I go snowboarding? I know. I'll open a restaurant. We appreciate it in Colorado. That's awesome.
And it turns out that the places that we ended up expanding to are the places that our customers had either moved to or had very similar interests to the kids that grew up in Southern California. So there's a lot of what you call great party schools. And if you think about it, that's where all the Southern California kids go, right? They're going, hey, if I'm going to spend 4 years of my life, I might as well go to a fun place. And Colorado is one of those great destinations.
One of the things that, in my opinion, that makes Wahoos so unique is it really brings kind of that taste of the surf culture to Denver, Colorado, Lincoln, Nebraska, Las Vegas, Nevada. Talk about how you kind of started to take, which I'm sure was just the way you decorated your first restaurant with stickers and surfboards on the wall, and how you been able to transport that. I guess it's a vibe. I don't know that experience more or less to all these different restaurants.
One of the key aspects is the fact that when you walk into what I call a surf shop, that's where you see all of these brands. So I thought if I wanted to be, have the same feel, I needed to decorate my restaurant to be more like a surf shop as opposed to what I call a sports bar. So that was the beginning, like really. And also, if you think about it, when you're starting up a business, you really don't have a lot of money. So using what I call branded things that made it cool at the same time was an inexpensive way for us to decorate the restaurant. I had no idea that I was actually promoting for my friends' companies, but it turned out to be that way. So we've gone from what I call just having stickers and then having banners and having surfboards to actually now a lot of the newer stores have murals painted by the artists that design, clothing for these companies. And for them, it's kind of almost like even a bigger stake on the ground. It's having their custom flag. It's not just a sticker that anybody could get because it's super branded. I mean, New York has this beautiful mural painted by one of the guys from Element Skateboards. I mean, there's murals by Volcom. There's murals by Ruka. So these are amazing brands and people love it. So it's now one of those where there's limited space. So people really kind of jockey for position to make sure that their artwork is displayed. So it's kind of good for us. It's good for them because it reemphasizes how our brands are all kind of mutually, partners, and we're all hanging out together and promoting the lifestyle.
I think that's probably one of the most unique things about your story and about the story of Wahoos is how you guys. I don't think it was probably, we would call it business development today, but you guys probably never sat down and said, "Hey, we're going to work together to make sure that we're promoting each other." But what you developed is kind of a community of these cool brands that all sort of lifted each other up. I mean, at any point in time, did you guys sit down and have the conversation of, "Hey, we're actually doing something real and amazing here"?
They always say in team sports, there's no I in team. So my whole thought is because I played sports in high school, and I always thought, hey, you can do a lot more if everybody's on the same page. And also, if you think about the economics of it, again, from a small startup, you can go out and do something by yourself and spend all your resources and money. But if you bring in one guy, well, you've now just cut your cost in half. If you bring in three guys, you see that it's an economic thing. So I did it mostly because I didn't really have the money to do it. And I always thought, hey, I'm not that famous. I only have one restaurant. I mean, who am I? But Quicksilver is kind of like a really cool brand. Billabong is a really cool brand. So if maybe I can do something with them, kids may actually think I'm, part of the tribe. So I did it for economic reasons. I did it because I didn't really know any better. And I did it because I thought, hey, if I can stand next to somebody who's a little cooler than I am, people might think I'm cool. And it worked out.
It's what you were doing was just hooking into the brands that you thought were cool.
Yeah.
But it was kind of this brilliant branding play in itself. Because by hooking into Billabong, to Quicksilver, et cetera, you kind of are now thought of as part of that surf culture, which now when we go to Denver, Colorado, or Las Vegas, Nevada, you get a little bit of that experience.
Yep. And the whole thing is, now when you look at the history, companies that came after me, like the Volcoms of the world, the Rukas of the world, the Nixons of the world, all these new startup brands were people that worked at the bigger brands. So I did the pay forward. I got help from the Billabongs, so I helped the next guy and the next. So it's this really beautiful circle of life, as they call it. And so it also keeps me relevant because you got a new startup, which is fresh, and you kids are excited about the new startup. And it's, they're on the cutting edge, as we call it, because Quicksilver and Billabong, they've been around a long time. So it's always kind of like, instead of having to reinvent myself, I was able to reinvent myself by attaching and helping the new guys. And it just kind of keeps going. And there's literally every year, there's 2 or 3 new companies. And they'll call me and goes, "Hey, Wayne, I used to work at XYZ company. Can I do something with you?" I'm like, "Absolutely. Because you used to help me when I was there." And it just keeps going. And so it keeps us relevant. And at the same time, it gives me the ability to help somebody the same way they help me.
going to change gears for a minute. Talk a little bit about your background. You said you're born in
Yep,
Brazil,
born in Brazil,
from Brazil to
United States, in SoCal.
yeah, to SoCal. So talk about, I mean, kind of an interesting Chinese descent from Brazil to SoCal. Sort of an interesting cultural background there. How did that play into and help in your success in kind of building up this kind of a cool, funky
Well,
brand?
look at me, right? I guarantee you, there's a lot more guys that look like you in SoCal than me. So one of the things they teach you in the business school is differentiate yourself. Well, I can tell you, I look a lot different than a lot of people I know. So most traditional, what I call taco stands, have somebody, with a Roberto, Alberto, somebody like that running a shop. When they see an Asian guy behind the counter, they're like, what the hell? Did you get lost? Aren't you supposed to be working somewhere else? So again, it gives you an opening to tell your story. So all the things that I thought, oh my God, I always wanted to fit in. Why can't I be one of the white kids that, in the school, whatever? Now I'm like, hey, people recognize me for what I am. So the things that I used to fight when I was a kid, and somewhere in my 20s, I said, you know what, just might as well embrace it because the color of my skin is never going to change. So once you accept that, and use it to your advantage. So I find that the most interesting people are probably the most weirdest people that I'm sure when we were kids, God, why am I the odd man out or why am I the odd woman out? And today, these are some of the most successful people I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, if you think about it, having that experience of being the odd man out probably helps prepare you to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because being an entrepreneur is inherently being an odd man
Yeah,
out, right?
because everybody's telling you that there's no way in the world that you're going to succeed, right? 9 out of 10 restaurants fail within the first year. It's all those things because really, nobody really wants to see you succeed. So you have all the odds, but having the fact that, like I said, I was always fighting for everything I got, as a kid, it prepared me because I'm used to it. I mean, everybody's going to say no to me anyway. So I'm going to have to earn whatever my place is in life. So it really, thickens your skin a little bit and you really learn to, hey, just tackle and just block and go. I mean, there's really nothing you can do about it because nobody really wants to see you succeed.
Yeah, it's funny. I had this conversation with another entrepreneur. He's actually a veteran entrepreneur, but we started to equate it as kind of this
Yeah.
herd mentality. And by stepping out, just when you first step out and say, hey, I'm going to start a company, I'm going to go and be an entrepreneur, and I'm leaving the cube farm and I'm going to go be something like that. The first thing the herd does is go,
Yeah. No.
no, come back in. You're threatening our existence in the herd by you doing that. But any individuality, I mean, if you've had that experience of being, and we always talk about being geeks or, whatever, and certainly guilty as charged, but having that experience probably helps along the way at some point. It probably helps differentiate you and have that thick skin. So talk a little bit about that. Early days, you're starting a taco stand. People were calling you nuts. Tell me about
Well,
that.
I mean, like you think about it, back in '88, Bush Sr. was getting elected into the office. People knew we're going into a recession. And of all the times in the world to ever go into your own business, that was absolutely the worst. But the thing about it is, it can't get any worse in another way, because if you're at the bottom, the only thing you can do is go up, right? So we literally opened our doors the day after Bush got elected. I remember the night preparing for items for the next day, and Bush is getting sworn into the office. And people say, you are crazy. And again, these are the days that at the country club, people are like, what are you doing? Why are you giving up, a nice, comfortable, life working in the aerospace industry and the financial services for something that is probably the most risky thing you can do, labor intensive as hell. And, they're like, you're crazy. I mean, there was really nobody.
So you had a pretty good job before you did this. What were you doing before you
You're going to laugh. I worked in the aerospace industry in the Reagan years in Star Wars. So I'm very,
That's
very
mind-boggling.
safe. And I'll tell you one of the great stories of my time, if I, like having hindsight and everything, is I worked on this great, what they call security communication for battle management for the Air Force. I mean, this is how crazy the stuff I was working on. Top secret stuff. And it was really to decide in real time to make sure when you would launch your missiles. So everybody had to be on the same page in real time. Well, that security network years later became the internet. So all my buddies that worked at Sparta and all the companies that were associated with the contract, got stock options, and Sun Microsystems, which was the backbone of the internet then, this idea of ours, they were literally a $2 million startup. And from what I gather about in the mid 90s, when I finally figured out what they were doing, they literally went from 2 million to multi-billion. And at one point, they controlled half of the backbone of the internet. So all my engineer
And you're
buddies,
like, oh, if I only would have stayed and worked in the aerospace industry, a billionaire.
it's one of those stories. But instead, I went to make tacos. So I went from high tech to low tech.
One of the things that I read recently is that an immigrant is 40% more likely to start a company than somebody who's born in the U.S. Why do you think that is?
I think we are a lot more hungry, or we're stupid, one or the other. So
Or a combination
we don't know
thereof.
better. We're not preconditioned to be handed things, so we have to earn everything. So for us, it's like, hey, if we're going to look for somebody, we can make X. But if we go off on our own, we can make Y, right? So why not? And so I think half of it is ignorance. The other half is that we have balls because, again, we don't know better. We also have a chip on our shoulders to prove something because we were always told that, hey, you're never going to be as good as the kids here.
One of the things that I think you guys have done a really amazing job on is, I won't even call it PR, but it's kind of the social web presence. Taking what is a really cool in-restaurant experience and promoting that on the internet. Talk about how you came up with that, how you executed that strategy, and what are your thoughts on just using the social web to help what is this inherently a brick and mortar location?
So if you think about the original way of promoting anything, it's word of mouth, and you hope that people will talk about your product. Well, the internet allowed you to do it much faster and much cheaper. So again, when you're looking at the bottom line, you're thinking, how do I get the most ROI for my business and at the least expense? So we figured out really quickly the internet allowed you to spread the message. One of the biggest mistakes I think that a lot of people make is the internet is not so much about broadcasting your message, it's about sharing your message. And me being the business owner, I don't want to share the message because that's a broadcast. But if I could get people like you, my customers, my friends to talk about it, then it becomes more of a sharing. And we figured that out early on, that if we could get our customers to share and be a part of our experiences, either in our stores or at an event, they would talk about, oh my God, you should have been there, how much fun it was, the food was awesome. And that's how the internet allowed us to really succeed because we embraced it early on. We figured out that it wasn't about us standing on a soapbox. It was about our friends telling their friends what they were doing. And it really worked. It's because people are sharing their experiences. And that's what people want to do. So it's like you coming home from a weekend in Austin or wherever you've been and telling your friends what you did. Well, now you don't have to wait until you come back. You can share the experience while you're there by taking pictures, posting it on your Facebook or whatever you're doing. The old model was go somewhere and talk about it. Now you do it in real time.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you say so many of the brands, they go, okay, we need to adopt, we got to do something on Facebook. We need social media strategy. So what do? Well, let's get on social media and let's yell about whatever it is that we're doing. Like, we're so great. We're amazing. Come buy our product. They just get it wrong, right?
It's no different than you yelling how good your brand is than taking out a full page ad in the newspaper. It's the same message. So like I said, a full page ad in the newspaper works, but how much better would it be if somebody wrote a really nice story about what you were doing? I guarantee you get a lot more traction out of a PR piece than you would by taking a full page ad. So again, it's the message is you can do it yourself or have somebody talk about you. So it's almost like getting an introduction, an endorsement, a referral. It works way better than cold calling. So whenever you broadcast the message yourself, it's like, look at me, look how great I am. Well, nobody believes that, So but if somebody else says, hey, look at how great John or Tom or whoever, look at what they're doing. People actually go, hey, let me look at it. So it's a lot more believable when it's a referred or a third-party endorsement than you sitting there saying, hey, I'm the greatest taco maker in the world. Ha, ha, ha.
So I love that idea. I know that you currently teach MBA classes or business school
Yep.
classes? I love that idea of now you're going in to teach these MBA classes on stuff that you're like, well, we just got to figure it out. We don't have any money, so we got to figure out a way to get our
Yeah.
message out there.
So right now, I mean, I currently teach at Concordia University and Chapman University. They're both Orange County institutions. And I bring the students, they look at me first. I'm a little weird. And I'm like telling them, first thing you're going to find out when you're a startup is you have no money. And whatever money you decide to spend on anything, whether it's employees, advertising, whatever you want to do, it comes out of your pocket until you start earning money. So I allow them to integrate into the things that I'm doing. One of the big things that I try to teach with the kids is, again, when you don't have a lot of money, you got to create networks. So it is very, very true. It's not, what you know, it's who you know. Because again, when you can gather, be around, surround yourself with smart people, do things that you're not able to do yourself, what happens is you create this thing called synergy. And when you got 2 or 3 or 4 people working together, you can get a lot of things done. And again, you don't have to do all the lifting yourself. Because if you got 4 people lifting a piece of furniture, it's a lot easier than you trying to lift it yourself. And that's true about business. You got to have people that are smarter than you, that have skills that you don't have, and really embrace, what you're trying to do and want to see you succeed. So you succeeding, they succeed, and everybody keeps moving.
It's funny because you have this sort of storyline, and a lot of it comes out of Silicon Valley and these tech startups, which is here's the playbook to be successful. You build a product, you go raise money. Once you raise money, then you can spend money. But in reality, it's just like one path of hundreds of paths to be successful. And you guys, I mean, you didn't have any money. You just figured out a way to make it work.
Yeah. I mean, literally, you open your doors and you hope that people will come in. And then when they don't come in, you're going, okay, I know they're out there. How do I go get them? So we couldn't afford to really advertise. So I go to events and start showing that, hey, this is the food that we have and you should come to the restaurant and try it. And it worked because we started doing surf contests, things that nobody was interested in doing. So if I was going after surfers, I did surf events. I went to go after skaters. I did skateboarding events. So I figured out where my customers that I wanted were, and I went there. So you figured out, like, if you want to meet a girl, you got to go where the girls hang out, right? I mean, not rocket science. Increase your odds. So that's what I did in the early days. I couldn't do a pro event because those require sponsorship money. So I did the amateur events. And the amateurs became professional one day, and they became my customers.
If I had to say in one word what I think the brand is for you guys, it's cool.
Yeah.
All over the country, almost every company wants to try to be a cool brand. I mean, the whole notion with Facebook, like, well, you can't charge people because it'd be uncool.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the question is your brand is cool because you guys are cool. You're surfers. You have that really organically. But is it something that you guys ever talk about, or does it just happen?
So if you're an amazing surfer and you're out there, the waves are huge, and you drop in and you catch what I consider the biggest wave of your life, the last thing you do is throw up your arms like, oh my God, did you see that? You don't do that. What you do is you do a turn and you kick out the back of the wave, signaling to the people that are in the water. I do this all the time. See, you let other people talk about, did you just see that? Because the moment you claim it, that means you've never done it before. Right? So the coolest people that we've met in our history in high school, all the cool people, they never talked about how cool they were. Everybody else did. And that's the deal with life is you can't claim because then you're no longer cool. You can't go, look at me, look at me. The moment you do that, people are like, dude, you're a dork. So life is about you being a part of the tribe, not the chief. And that's what makes our whole group really cool because nobody's sitting here and goes, look at me. We're all sitting here and goes, did you see what he did? Did you see what he did? And when you have enough people doing that for you, that's the internet, that's the world. It's all about letting people tell their friends that you are the man. But you can't say, look at me, I'm the man. That's never worked.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, which is everything that you're doing with your social marketing and allowing that word of mouth to grow. It's never standing up and thumping yourself on the chest going, we've got the best stuff.
Yeah, you'll never hear me say that I make the best taco. You'll never hear me say that I'm the best of anything. I just say, this is what I love doing, and I hope you enjoy it because other people are. And let them do the talking. But very, very rarely will you ever see me anywhere talking about how bitching we are. We're not. We're just a bunch of guys that figured out that, hey, people want to eat some fish tacos. We think we can make a good one and hope you're enjoying it.
I can't think of a better place to stop than there. But it started out, believe in connection and collaboration. How can people connect and collaborate with you?
Yep. Literally, they can email me. I mean, anytime. Go on my website. All my students, they're with me for life, whether they want it or not. And most of my friends know that, hey, unless you really, do something that I don't appreciate, I will always be here. And people literally, I mean, I speak all the time at different business conferences, and people will ask me all kinds of questions. They'll, take me out to lunch so they can pick my brains about what they're doing next. And I'll tell them, hey, I'll give you my best thinking, whether you like it or not. And I'm brutally honest because I want you to know what you're about to do. It's owning your own business is not the easiest thing in the world. So I'll give you the reality gut check, but I'll give you the ups, the downs, but I wish you all the luck. And most people appreciate it. And to me, I'm a great resource to all my friends. And and it's what I've done. And I don't know if I can stop doing it, but it does take a lot of time to.
Yeah. Wing, thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for joining us on the Startup.
Thank you.